Yo, it's Kim, and the thing about using your camera is that you want to make it your own. Basically, the more you use your camera, this tool, maybe for work or for fun, the more you get used to it, and that can be a bad thing. Let me explain. You see, just because a camera manufacturer put the buttons and dials in a certain way, that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it, and that doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it either. Everybody's a little bit different, everybody's gonna have a different preference. So something I like to do when I get a new camera is that I like to get used to the camera enough to be familiar, but then after that I start customizing the buttons. This really helps out my workflow, and whether it's just for fun or for actual work, it'll make your experience a lot better. So today I'm gonna show you guys how I program a G7, and hopefully that'll give you guys ideas about how to customize your own camera. Well, actually this is a G85, but they're close enough that it doesn't make a difference. Now the first thing to note about setting your custom buttons is that you don't even need to go to the menu to customize them. So let's say I wanted to change the function on FN1, I just long press on that button and I can basically change it from there. So starting off with the function buttons with FN1 right here, I program that to be the ISO button. And normally that's the exposure comp, but that doesn't work for me. So you may be thinking there's an ISO button right here. Why don't you just use that? Well, the thing is, if you're holding the camera with one hand and say you wanted to change the ISO real quick, you're gonna have to change your grip from this to this. And you've already got this free finger at the top, so why don't you use that instead? So instead of needing to change my grip to change the ISO like this, I just press that button right there, boom, and I can quickly change my ISO. So that's FN1. Now moving on to FN2, I've actually kept that to the Q menu. That's really helpful. The Q menu is actually a really helpful function on this camera. I use it to change the frames per second and the aspect ratio and whether I'm shooting RAW and JPEG pretty often. So that's a really helpful button. I've kept that the same. Moving on to FN3, this I've kept it as my Wi-Fi. And this is really helpful for when I'm using my camera for YouTube especially. Normally I need to set focus on my camera, and that's primarily why I need the Wi-Fi. So even if I have the camera turned backwards, I already know which button is function 3. Really easy for me to feel because it's part of this circle and I just know it's the button on the bottom. Now moving on to function 4, this I've set as the stabilizer. And now you may be thinking, why don't you just use the one on the lens? Well, some lenses don't have it, just like this one. Actually, most of my lenses don't have it. Actually, I don't even think I have a lens that has a button for a stabilizer. The thing is, when you've put the G7 on a tripod and you've got a lens that has OIS, sometimes it'll actually shake. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. It doesn't matter if you have a lens that doesn't have OIS, it's just the lenses with OIS. So I like to have a quick button to turn that off whenever I have that camera on a tripod. So for FN5, I've actually kept that the same. That's just to toggle between the LCD and the EVF. So overall, that's what I've done with the function buttons. Moving on to the C1 and C2 custom functions on the dial, what this actually does is it allows you to save your settings. So let's say you wanted to shoot at full HD 1080p at 50 FPS at 1/100th shutter speed and at ISO 1000. I'm gonna go to the custom menu right here, that's the wrench with the C, and head over to the first page, and it's gonna be the top option. And I'm just gonna save that as C1. Now every time I go to C1, it's gonna be those settings: 50 FPS at 1080p, 1/100th shutter speed, and 1000 ISO. You basically have 4 different settings here because C1 only has one option, but when you toggle over to C2, you've actually got 3 other modes. So you can basically set 4 different modes using just these 2 modes on the dial. The reason I don't use this so often anymore is because the settings don't change once I've adjusted them. So say I was filming in 50 FPS, 1/100th of a shutter speed, and 200 ISO, but then the lighting changed on set. So I'll set that to 800. Alright, and I'll shoot like this for a while, But then let's say I change back to another option and then I go back to C2, all of a sudden my ISO's back down to 200. But that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from this option. It's for a particular use, and for run and gun filmmaking, it's not always helpful. But hey, at least that's another option for you to customize your camera. So that's basically it. I hope you got something out of this. I just wanted to show you guys how I customized my camera and hopefully got to spark ideas about how you can customize yours. I also wanted to show you guys that these custom modes and these custom buttons aren't something to be afraid of, and they're something that you can harness to make your workflow faster, whether it's just for fun or for actual work. Anyway, that's it, and I'll see you guys next time.